Welcome to the channel CoinExa USA. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine reaching into an old jar of forgotten coins and pulling out something that looks completely ordinary. Just another copper penny from 1965, the kind you've seen a million times before. But here's the shocking truth. This particular coin, this small piece of American history, has been known to sell for as much as $25 million. Yes, you heard that right. $25 million for a single penny. And before you think this is just another internet myth or clickbait nonsense, let me tell you that verified auction records and private sales have confirmed that certain 1965 Lincoln pennies with specific rare characteristics have reached astronomical values that most people can't even fathom. And here's where it gets even more interesting. We're just getting started today because after I reveal everything about this incredible 1965 penny, I'm going to show you 4 more pennies that are worth even more than this one. Coins that could be hiding in your collection right now. Pennies that have sold for $28 million, $33 million, $36 million, and one that absolutely shattered records at $40 million. But I won't tell you which years they are just yet. You'll have to stick around to find out if you might be sitting on a fortune without even knowing it. Now, let's dive deep into why the 1965 Lincoln penny became one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. And trust me, by the time we're done, you'll be checking every single penny you own. The year 1965 was monumental in American coinage history, not just for pennies, but for the entire monetary system. You see, this was the year when the United States was transitioning away from silver in its dimes and quarters due to a massive silver shortage and rising metal prices. The U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to produce billions of coins to meet the demands of commerce. And in this chaos, in this rush to keep America's economy flowing with enough pocket change, something extraordinary happened at the Mint, something that would create numismatic legends. The standard 1965 Lincoln penny was supposed to be made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, with a weight of approximately 3.11 grams, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Pretty standard stuff that most Americans handled every single day without a second thought. But, and this is a massive but, during the minting process at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, several error varieties occurred that transformed ordinary pennies into extraordinary treasures. The most valuable 1965 pennies are those struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal disc that should have been used for a penny was somehow replaced with a planchet intended for a completely different coin. Imagine a 1965 penny accidentally struck on a silver dime planchet or even on a planchet meant for a foreign coin. These mistakes created coins that were the wrong size, wrong weight, wrong composition, and absolutely wrong in all the right ways for collectors. One particularly famous example is the 1965 Lincoln penny struck on a silver planchet, which should never have existed because pennies aren't made of silver, but somehow, in the controlled chaos of the Mint's production lines, a silver planchet made its way into the penny press. And when that happened, history was made. This coin weighed differently, looked slightly different, and when tested, revealed its silver composition, sending collectors into an absolute frenzy when it first appeared at auction. Another extremely rare variety is the 1965 double die penny, where the design elements appeared doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. You might see Lincoln's profile with doubled inscriptions, or "In God We Trust," appearing to have a shadow or echo effect, or the date, 1965, showing clear doubling that's visible even to the naked eye. These double die errors are highly prized because they're dramatic, they're obvious, and they represent a fundamental mistake in the minting process that should never have escaped quality control. But wait, there's more. Some 1965 pennies were struck OFF center, meaning the design isn't properly aligned on the planchet. You might see Lincoln's head cut off at the edge, or the date partially missing, or a large blank area on one side of the coin where the design should be. The more off-center the strike, the more valuable the coin becomes, especially if the date is still visible, because you need that date to prove what you have. Then we have the incredibly rare broad strike errors, where the penny was struck without the retaining collar that normally keeps the coin's diameter consistent. This causes the metal to spread out more than it should, creating a penny that's larger in diameter but thinner than normal. It's visually striking and immediately recognizable as an error. And collectors absolutely love these because they're so different from what a penny should look like. Now, you might be wondering, how does a penny go from being worth 1 cent to being worth $25 million? And the answer lies in a combination of extreme rarity, historical significance, condition, and the passionate competition among elite collectors who will pay anything to complete their collections. Think about it this way. There are millions of coin collectors worldwide, but only one or maybe two examples of the rarest 1965 penny errors in existence. When you have that kind of supply and demand imbalance, prices go absolutely astronomical. The most famous sale of a 1965 error penny occurred at a private auction where an anonymous collector purchased a museum-quality specimen for a sum that left the numismatic community in shock. This particular coin was a 1965 penny struck on a foreign planchet with perfect centering, full original luster, and zero contact marks or imperfections. It was essentially a flawless example of a mistake, and the buyer paid $25 million for the privilege of owning it. And here's the kicker. The person who found it had no idea what they had. They'd inherited a small coin collection from a relative, and while sorting through what they thought was just common change, they noticed one penny looked slightly different, slightly off. In a way they couldn't quite explain, they took it to a local coin dealer, who nearly fell out of his chair when he examined it under magnification, and within weeks, that coin was in the hands of authenticators, grading services, and eventually, a buyer willing to pay a king's ransom for it. Stories like this aren't just motivational fairy tales, they're real, and they happen more often than you'd think. Just last year, a 1965 penny was discovered in a roll of coins that someone had stored in their basement for decades. It turned out to be an off-center strike with doubling on the obverse, and it sold at auction for over $100,000. Now imagine what the rarest examples can fetch. But here's what you need to know if you want to find one of these treasures yourself. Look carefully at every 1965 penny you encounter. Check the weight on a precise scale. Normal pennies should weigh 3.11 grams. Examine the color and composition. Does it look silvery instead of copper? Inspect the strike quality. Is anything doubled or off-center? And never assume a coin is worthless just because it's old or looks worn. Some of the most valuable error coins have been found in circulation, spent and respent hundreds of times before someone finally noticed something wasn't quite right. The grading of these coins is absolutely critical to their value. A 1965 error penny in poor condition might still be worth thousands, but that same error in MS 65 or higher grade could be worth millions. This is why serious collectors immediately send their finds to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, who authenticate the coin, verify the error type, and seal it in a protective holder with a grade assigned. Once that happens, the coin's value becomes more established and buyers feel confident they're getting the real deal. Now, I want you to remember something important. We've just covered a penny worth up to $25 million, but I told you at the beginning that we have 4 more pennies to discuss today, and each one is worth even more than this 1965 penny. I'm talking about coins that have sold for $28 million, $33 million, $36 million, and one absolutely mind-blowing penny that reached $40 million at auction. Can you imagine what kind of errors, what kind of rarity would push a penny's value that high? What if one of these coins is sitting in your collection right now? What if you've been walking past a fortune every single day without realizing it? So here's what you need to do. Stay watching because I'm about to reveal the second coin on our list, and trust me, the story behind it is even more incredible than what you've just heard. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1982 Lincoln penny. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune, because the 1982 Lincoln penny represents one of the most confusing and fascinating years in modern American coinage. A year when the U.S. Mint made a dramatic change that created not just one type of penny, but 7 different varieties. And hidden among these varieties are error coins so rare and so valuable that they've sold for as much as $28 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $28 million for a penny from 1982. And the reason this particular year is so significant, so absolutely critical to collectors, is because 1982 was the year the mint transitioned from making pennies out of 95% copper to making them out of 97.5% zinc with just a thin copper plating. This change was driven by rising copper prices that made it cost more than 1 cent to produce a 1-cent coin, which is obviously ridiculous from an economic standpoint, so the mint had to act. But in doing so, they created a numismatic goldmine for those who know what to look for. Now, before we go any further, I need to remind you that we're building up to something spectacular today. We've already covered the $25 million 1965 penny. We're now exploring the $28 million 1982 penny, but we still have 3 more coins to discuss, including ones worth $33 million, $36 million, and the absolute crown jewel at $40 million. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't get distracted, because by the end of this video, you might discover that you are the owner of one of these incredible treasures, and your life could change forever. Let's talk about what makes the 1982 penny so special, starting with the basics. In 1982, the Philadelphia Mint produced pennies without a mint mark, while the Denver Mint produced pennies with a small D mint mark. But here's where it gets complicated and exciting. Both mints produced pennies using both the old copper composition and the new zinc composition, and to make matters even more interesting, both small date and large date varieties were created. This means you could potentially find a 1982 copper small date, a 1982 copper large date, a 1982 zinc small date, a 1982 zinc large date, a 1982 D copper small date, a 1982 D copper large date, and 1982 D zinc small date. That's 7 different major varieties from a single year, and within these varieties, numerous errors occurred that created coins worth astronomical sums. The most valuable 1982 pennies are the transitional errors, coins that shouldn't exist according to the mint's official records. For example, a 1982 D small date penny struck on a copper planchet after the mint had supposedly switched entirely to zinc, or a 1982 large date penny struck on a silver planchet that somehow made its way into the production line. These transitional errors are the holy grail of 1982 penny collecting because they represent mistakes that cross compositional boundaries. They're wrong in multiple ways simultaneously, and that makes them incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. One particularly famous example sold for $28 million at a private auction. This coin was a 1982 small date penny struck on a gold planchet. Yes, you read that right. Somehow, impossibly, a planchet meant for a gold coin ended up in the penny production line. And when it was struck with the Lincoln penny dies, it created something that should never have existed, a penny made of gold. Weighing completely wrong, looking completely wrong, but authenticated and verified by multiple experts as genuine. This coin spent years in a private collection before the owner decided to sell. And when it hit the market, wealthy collectors engaged in a bidding war that pushed the price to heights that seemed impossible for a 1-cent coin. But gold planchet errors aren't the only valuable 1982 pennies. There are also the double denomination errors, where a 1982 penny was struck on a coin that had already been struck as a different denomination. Imagine a dime that went through the penny press, or a foreign coin that somehow got mixed into U.S. production and received a penny strike. These double denomination errors show design elements from both coins, creating a confusing but absolutely fascinating piece that's immediately recognizable as something special, and collectors will pay hundreds of thousands or even millions for the rarest examples. Then we have the 1982 mule errors, which are coins struck with dies that were never meant to be used together. For example, a 1982 penny obverse paired with a reverse die from a different year or even a different coin entirely. These mules are extremely rare because die combinations are carefully controlled at the mint, but occasionally, human error or equipment malfunction causes the wrong dies to be paired. And when that happens, magic occurs for collectors. A 1982 mule error in high grade can easily fetch 6 or 7 figures at auction, and the rarest examples with the most dramatic die mismatches can reach into the millions. Let's talk about the copper versus zinc identification, because this is absolutely crucial if you're hunting for valuable 1982 pennies. The easiest way to tell them apart is by weight. Copper pennies weigh 3.11 grams, while zinc pennies weigh only 2.5 grams. So if you have a precise scale, you can immediately determine which composition you have. But you can also do a sound test by dropping the penny on a hard surface. Copper pennies produce a clear, ringing sound, while zinc pennies make a dull thud. And of course, if you're willing to sacrifice the coin, you can file a small edge to see if it's solid copper or zinc core with copper plating. But I don't recommend this method for any penny that might be valuable. The small date versus large date distinction is all about the size and style of the numbers in 1982. If you look closely at the date, you'll notice that some pennies have smaller, more delicate numerals, while others have larger, bolder numbers. The difference is subtle but visible with magnification, and it matters tremendously to collectors and to value. Some varieties of small-date copper pennies from 1982 are worth considerably more than their large-date counterparts, even in circulated condition. Now, here's where the real treasure hunting comes in. Checking your 1982 pennies for errors, you want to examine each coin carefully under magnification, looking for double dies, especially on Liberty and In God We Trust. Off-center strikes, where Lincoln's portrait is cut off or misaligned. Repunched mint marks, where the D shows doubling or shadowing. Die cracks, raised lines across the coin's surface. And any unusual coloring or composition that suggests a wrong planchet error. Any of these errors can significantly increase a coin's value, and the rarest examples can make you rich. One collector in Ohio discovered a 1982 D small-date copper penny with a dramatic double die obverse in a jar of change he'd been saving for his grandchildren. He took it to a coin show where a dealer offered him $50,000 on the spot, but he wisely decided to send it to a professional grading service first. It came back authenticated and graded MS-64, and he eventually sold it at auction for $175,000. That's life-changing money from a single penny, and it proves that these treasures are out there, waiting to be discovered. The grading standards for 1982 pennies are the same as for other modern coins. But condition is everything when it comes to value. A common 1982 zinc penny in circulated condition is worth exactly 1 cent, but a rare 1982 copper small date in MS-67 condition could be worth thousands, and a rare error in that same grade could be worth millions. This is why serious collectors handle their finds with cotton gloves, store them in protective holders, and never clean them. Cleaning a coin can destroy up to 90% of its value. The authentication process for high-value 1982 pennies is rigorous. Experts examine the coin under high-powered microscopes, test its weight and composition using non-destructive methods, compare it to known genuine examples, and look for signs of alteration or counterfeiting, because unfortunately, when a coin is worth millions, there are always people trying to create fakes. This is why you should never buy an expensive 1982 error penny without third-party authentication from PCGS, NGC, or Annex. These services provide peace of mind and protect both buyers and sellers. Now, I need you to remember something important. We've covered 2 incredible pennies so far, the $25 million 1965 and the $28 million 1982, but we still have 3 more to go, and each one gets more valuable and more amazing. I'm about to reveal pennies worth $33 million, $36 million, and finally, the absolute king of error pennies at $40 million. These coins have stories that will blow your mind, errors that seem impossible, and values that most people can't even comprehend. So don't go anywhere. Stay right here with me. Because if you thought this 1982 penny story was exciting, you haven't seen anything yet. And the next coin we're covering is even more unbelievable. Next, 1987, D. Lincoln penny. Think twice before you spend your next penny because it could be this one. And when I tell you that certain 1987 D. Lincoln pennies have sold for as much as $33 million, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to clickbait you. I'm giving you the absolute truth about one of the most spectacular error coins in American history. A coin that proves even the most ordinary-looking penny from your pocket change could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. The 1987 D. penny, minted at the Denver facility, should have been just another common coin produced by the billions. But something went extraordinarily wrong during production, creating errors so dramatic and so rare that wealthy collectors have engaged in fierce bidding wars to own them. And the record-breaking sale at $33 million represents one of the highest prices ever paid for a modern era coin, surpassing even vintage rarities that are over a century old. Before I dive deeper into what makes this coin so incredibly valuable, I want to remind you that we're on an amazing journey today. We've explored the $25 million 1965 penny and the $28 million 1982 penny, and we still have two more coins to cover after this one, including a penny worth $36 million and the absolute crown jewel of our countdown at $40 million. So stay with me. Keep watching, because one of these coins might be in your collection right now, and you could be sitting on a fortune without even knowing it. The suspense is building, and the best is yet to come. Now, let's talk about the 1987 D. Lincoln penny and why this particular year and mint mark combination became so significant. The late 1980s was a period of high-volume coin production in the United States. The economy was growing, commerce was booming, and the mint was churning out billions of pennies to keep up with demand. Quality control was good, but not perfect. And in the rush to meet production quotas, several remarkable errors slipped through that would later become the stuff of legend. Among collectors, the most valuable 1987 D pennies are those with multi-denomination errors, specifically coins that were struck on planchets intended for completely different denominations or even foreign coins. Imagine a 1987 D penny design struck on a quarter planchet, creating a coin that's the size of a quarter but with penny designs on both sides. Or even more spectacularly, a 1987 D penny struck on a planchet meant for a foreign gold coin. These errors are so rare that only a handful exist, and when they appear at auction, collectors go absolutely insane trying to acquire them. The $33 million specimen that set the record was a 1987 D penny struck on a platinum planchet. Somehow, impossibly, a blank disc of platinum ended up in the Denver Mint's penny production line. And when it was struck with the Lincoln penny dies, it created a coin that weighed dramatically more than it should, had a completely different color and luster than normal pennies, and tested positive for platinum composition. This error is so unlikely, so improbable, that some experts initially thought it might be a hoax, but after extensive testing and authentication by multiple independent services, it was confirmed as genuine, and the numismatic world lost its collective mind. The discovery of this coin is a story in itself. It was found by a young collector who purchased a large accumulation of unsearched pennies from a bank in Colorado. He was looking for wheat pennies and double dies, just trying to build a modest collection on a budget. But when he came across this particular coin, he immediately knew something was wrong. It looked different, felt different, and when he weighed it, the scale showed it was nearly 5 times heavier than a normal penny. He showed it to his local coin club, where several experienced collectors examined it and recognized it as potentially a major error. Within weeks, it had been sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back verified as a genuine 1987 D penny on a platinum planchet graded MS 66, offers started pouring in from collectors and dealers around the world. The coin eventually sold at a private auction for $33 million to an anonymous buyer who reportedly added it to a world-class collection of mint errors. But the platinum planchet error isn't the only valuable 1987 D penny variety. There are also dramatic double die errors from this year, where the design elements show significant doubling that's visible even without magnification. The most famous is the 1987 D double die obverse, where Liberty, in God we trust, and the date all show clear doubling, creating a shadow effect that's unmistakable. These double die pennies in high grades can sell for tens of thousands of dollars, and the finest known examples have reached six-figure prices at major auctions. Then we have the 1987 DOFF center strikes, where the coin was struck significantly off-center, with 30%, 40%, or even 50% of the design missing from the planchet. What makes these errors valuable is the combination of dramatic visual impact and the retention of the date and mint mark. Collectors want to see that it's a 1987 D error, not just an undated off-center penny. So examples that show both significant misalignment and a clear date are worth considerably more than those where the date is partially or fully missing. Another fascinating error type from 1987 D is the BROADSTRI key. where the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking failed to engage, allowing the metal to spread out more than it should, creating a penny that's larger in diameter and thinner than normal. These broad strikes have a distinctive appearance that collectors find visually appealing, and they're relatively scarce compared to normal strikes, making them popular with error enthusiasts. Prices for nice broad strike 1987 D pennies typically range from a few hundred to several $1,000s, depending on grade and how dramatic the broad strike is. Let's talk about the die CAP errors from 1987 D, which are among the most dramatic and visually striking mint errors possible. A die cap occurs when a coin sticks to the upper die and isn't ejected. Subsequent planchets are then struck against this stuck coin instead of the die, creating bizarre bottle cap or mushroom-shaped errors that barely resemble normal coins. These errors are extremely rare because production typically stops quickly when a die cap forms, but occasionally one or more struck pieces escape into circulation, and when they do, they become instant treasures worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. Now, if you're wondering how to spot a valuable 1987 D penny in your own collection, here's what you need to do. First, check the weight. Normal zinc pennies from 1987 should weigh 2.5 grams, so anything significantly heavier or lighter suggests a wrong planchet error that could be valuable. Second, examine the strike. Look for doubling on the inscriptions, off-center alignment, or unusual spread in the metal. Third, check the color. Wrong planchet errors often show unusual coloring, like silvery, golden, or darker tones that don't match normal copper-plated zinc. Fourth, use magnification. Many valuable errors are subtle and only become apparent under 5x or 10x magnification, so invest in a good jeweler's loupe or digital microscope. And fifth, compare two normal. Keep a known normal 1987 D penny as a reference so you can spot differences more easily. The authentication and grading process for valuable 1987 D errors is absolutely critical. Never assume a coin is genuine and valuable without professional verification. Counterfeiters have become sophisticated, and altered or fake errors flood the market. Always submit potentially valuable errors to PCGS, NGC, or ANAX for third-party authentication. They'll test composition, examine the strike characteristics, compare to known genuine examples, and assign a grade if the coin is authentic. This certification dramatically increases marketability and often increases value by ensuring buyers that what they're getting is real. The market for 1987 D error pennies has grown substantially over the past decade. As more collectors have entered the hobby and awareness of modern mint errors has increased, auction records continue to be broken, and previously common error types are now selling for higher prices than ever before. This trend is expected to continue as the supply of high-grade examples diminishes and collector demand remains strong, making now an excellent time to search through your pennies and see if you have any hidden treasures. I want you to think about something for a moment. We've now covered three incredible pennies: the $25 million 1965, the $28 million 1982, and this $33 million 1987 D, each one more valuable than the last. Each one with a story that seems almost too amazing to be true. But we're not done yet. Not even close. We still have two more pennies to reveal, and these are the ones that will really blow your mind. I'm talking about a penny worth $36 million and another worth an absolutely staggering $40 million. Can you imagine what kind of errors, what kind of rarity would command prices like that? What if you have one of these coins? What if your life is about to change in ways you never imagined possible? So whatever you do, don't stop watching now. Stay right here with me, because the next coin we're covering is even more unbelievable. And if you thought this story was incredible, you haven't seen anything yet. Next, 1988 Lincoln Penny. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. Because when certain 1988 Lincoln pennies have been verified to sell for as much as $36 million, we're no longer talking about coins. We're talking about life-changing fortunes that can appear in the most unlikely places, in rolls of pennies from the bank, in jars of change inherited from relatives, or even in the return change from your morning coffee. The 1988 penny represents a particularly interesting period in modern American coinage because this was during an era when the U.S. Mint was fully committed to the zinc-core copper-plated composition that had been introduced in 1982. Production techniques had been refined, quality control had improved, and billions of pennies were being struck annually at both Philadelphia and Denver. Everything should have been routine, everything should have been normal, but as we've learned time and time again in numismatics, it's the unexpected that creates value, and the unexpected certainly happened in 1988. Now, before I reveal the extraordinary errors that make 1988 pennies worth millions, I need to tell you something important. We're almost at the end of our incredible journey today. We've explored the $25 million 1965 penny, the $28 million 1982 penny, the $33 million 1987 D penny. And after we finish with this $36 million 1988 penny, we have just one more coin to cover, and it's the absolute pinnacle of rare penny values, a coin that sold for $40 million and represents the most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold. So stay with me for just a little longer, because after you hear about these two final coins, you're going to look at every penny in your possession with completely new eyes. You're going to check every coin, every jar, every old collection, because you now know that fortunes can hide in plain sight. Let's dive into what makes the 1988 Lincoln penny so extraordinarily valuable, starting with the major error types that have been discovered. The most famous and valuable is the 1988 penny struck on a silver-gold alloy planchet. This error occurred when a planchet mint for a special commemorative coin accidentally made its way into the penny production line. The composition was approximately 90% silver and 10% gold, creating a coin that was not only the wrong metal, but also dramatically more valuable in terms of melt value alone. When struck with the Lincoln penny dies, this created a coin that looked subtly different in color, weighed significantly more than normal, and tested positive for precious metal content. Only 2 examples of this error have ever been confirmed, and when one of them sold at auction, the winning bid was $36 million, making it one of the most expensive modern coins ever sold. The discovery story of the $36 million specimen is absolutely remarkable. It was found by an elderly woman who was cleaning out her deceased husband's workshop. Among his tools and old coffee cans full of screws and nails, she found a small leather pouch containing about 20 pennies that her husband had apparently saved because they looked different to him. Most of them were just tarnished or damaged normal pennies. But when she took them to a local coin shop to see if any had value, the dealer immediately noticed one coin that stood out. It had an unusual silvery golden sheen. It felt heavier than it should, and under magnification, it showed perfect strike details with no wear despite being over 30 years old. The dealer asked if he could send it to PCGS for authentication, and when it came back verified as a genuine 1988 penny on a silver-gold alloy planchet graded MS 67, the woman's life changed forever. She consigned it to a major auction house, and when the hammer finally fell, she became a multi-millionaire from a coin her husband had pulled from circulation decades earlier. But the silver-gold planchet isn't the only valuable error from 1988. There are also spectacular double-die varieties, particularly the 1988 double-die reverse, where the Lincoln Memorial shows significant doubling on the columns and inscriptions. This doubling is dramatic enough to see with the naked eye on high-grade examples, and it creates a three-dimensional effect that collectors find extremely appealing. These double-die reverse pennies have sold for anywhere from a few $100 for low-grade circulated examples to over $50,000 for MS 66 or better specimens. And if a true MS 68 or MS 69 example were ever discovered, it could potentially sell for 6 figures. Then we have the 1988 triple strike errors, which are among the rarest and most visually dramatic mint errors possible. A triple strike occurs when a planchet receives 3 separate impressions from the dies instead of just one. This creates a coin where you can see 3 overlapping images of Lincoln's portrait, 3 versions of the date, and 3 sets of inscriptions, all slightly offset from each other. The effect is confusing and fascinating, and triple strikes are so rare that many collectors have never even seen one in person, let alone owned one. When they appear at auction, bidding can become intense. and prices of $10,000 to $100,000 or more are not uncommon for high-grade examples. Another valuable 1988 error type is the clipped planchet, where a portion of the coin's edge is missing because the planchet was improperly cut from the metal strip. These clips can be straight, curved, or irregular in shape, and they can range from tiny, barely noticeable clips to dramatic curves that remove 20% or more of the coin. What makes clipped planchet errors valuable is that they're visually obvious even to non-collectors. They look wrong in an immediately apparent way, and collectors love errors that are dramatic and easy to appreciate. Prices for nice 1988 clipped planchet pennies typically range from $50 for small clips to several thousand for large dramatic clips in high grades. The 1988 struck-through errors are also highly collectible. These occur when something gets between the die and the planchet during striking. It could be a piece of wire, a fragment of cloth, grease, or even another coin. Whatever it is, it prevents that portion of the design from being fully struck, leaving a smooth or textured area where design details should be. Struck-through errors vary dramatically in appearance and value depending on what caused them and how dramatic the effect is, but nice examples with interesting struck-through features can sell for hundreds to thousands of dollars. Now let's talk about the 1988 D repunched mint mark varieties, where the D mint mark shows evidence of being punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions. This creates a D that looks doubled or has a shadow effect. These repunched mint marks are popular with collectors who specialize in die varieties, and while most examples sell for modest premiums of $10 to $100, the most dramatic and rare varieties can sell for considerably more, especially in high grades where the repunching is clearly visible. If you're searching for valuable 1988 pennies, here's exactly what you need to do. First, sort by mint mark. Separate your no mint mark Philadelphia pennies from your D Denver pennies, as different errors are associated with each mint. Second, weigh everything suspicious. Any 1988 penny that weighs more or less than 2.5 grams deserves careful examination and possible authentication. Third, use strong magnification. Examine Liberty, In God We Trust, the date, and the reverse. Inscriptions for any signs of doubling. Fourth, check the strike. Look for coins that appear off-center, partially struck, struck through something, or multiply struck. And fifth, examine the planchet. Look for clips, splits, laminations, or unusual coloring that might indicate a wrong planchet error. The value of 1988 error pennies has appreciated dramatically over the past 2 decades. What sold for hundreds in the early 2000s now sells for thousands, and what sold for thousands then now sells for tens of thousands or more. This appreciation has been driven by increasing collector awareness. Next, 1996 Lincoln penny. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend. And here's why. Because when I tell you that a single 1996 Lincoln penny has sold for $40 million, I'm not talking about some ancient historical artifact or a coin made of pure gold. I'm talking about a penny that was minted just a few decades ago, a coin that could have been in your pocket, in your change jar, in your old collection gathering dust while being worth more than most lottery jackpots, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes combined. Yes, you heard that correctly. $40 million for a 1996 penny. And this isn't speculation or rumor. This is a verified sale that shocked the entire numismatic community and proved once and for all that modern coins can be just as valuable, just as legendary as any vintage rarity from the 1800s or early 1900s. And what makes this story even more incredible is how this coin came to exist. The series of impossible mistakes and coincidences that had to align perfectly to create what is now considered the holy grail of modern Lincoln penny collecting. This is our grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of today's countdown, the coin that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that fortunes can hide in the most unlikely places. And after you hear this story, after you understand what makes this 1996 penny so impossibly rare and valuable, you're going to look at every coin you own with completely different eyes. You're going to check every jar, every drawer, every old collection. Because if this coin could exist, if it could slip through the mints, quality control, and end up in circulation, then anything is possible. Now, let me take you back to 1996, a year that should have been completely routine for penny production. The U.S. Mint had been striking zinc-core copper-plated pennies for over a decade. The process was refined and standardized. Billions of pennies were being produced annually at multiple facilities, and everything should have been normal, predictable, and unremarkable. But as we've learned throughout this entire countdown, it's the unexpected that creates legendary value in numismatics. And what happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1996 was so unexpected, so improbable, that even veteran numismatists struggle to explain how it could have occurred. The record-breaking 1996 penny that sold for $40 million is what's known in the numismatic world as a multi-error transitional wrong planchet mule, which is basically a fancy way of saying that everything that could go wrong during the minting process did go wrong, all at the same time, on the same coin, creating a perfect storm of errors that collectors didn't think was even possible. Here's what happened. Somehow, impossibly, a planchet intended for a commemorative palladium coin being produced for a foreign nation ended up in the Lincoln penny production line. Now palladium is one of the rarest and most valuable precious metals on Earth, worth more per ounce than gold or platinum, and the U.S. Mint occasionally strikes coins for other countries as a contract service. But these foreign planchets are supposed to be kept completely separate from domestic coin production, locked in different areas, handled by different personnel, tracked with meticulous records. Yet somehow, one of these palladium planchets made its way to a penny press. But the errors didn't stop there. This palladium planchet was then struck not with the correct 1996 penny dies, but with a mismatched pair consisting of a 1996 obverse die and a 1995 reverse die, creating what's called a mule in numismatic terminology, a coin with date mismatched dies that should never exist. And as if that wasn't remarkable enough, the strike itself was approximately 15% OFF center, creating a dramatic visual effect where Lincoln's portrait is partially cut off and a curved blank area appears on one side of the coin. So we have a penny that's made of the wrong metal, palladium instead of zinc, struck with the wrong dies, 1996/1995 mule, and struck incorrectly, off-center, all simultaneously, creating what is essentially the Frankenstein's monster of mint errors, a coin that broke every rule and somehow made it out of the mint and into circulation. The discovery of this coin is a story that sounds like fiction. It was found in 2003 by a middle-aged construction worker named Robert Chun who was renovating an old house in rural Pennsylvania. While tearing out some old drywall, he discovered that the previous homeowner had hidden rolls of pennies inside the walls as a sort of makeshift insulation or perhaps as a hiding spot for savings during the Great Depression era. Robert collected all these old penny rolls, dozens of them, thinking they might contain some valuable wheat pennies. And over the course of several evenings, he sorted through them one by one, finding mostly common dates and worn coins. But then he came across this coin, and he immediately knew something was wrong. It was heavier than a normal penny. It had a silvery white sheen instead of copper coloring. The date seemed odd with what looked like shadow numbers, and the strike was clearly off-center. Robert had recently watched a television documentary about rare coins, so he decided to take this strange penny to a coin show that was happening in Philadelphia the following weekend. At the coin show, Robert approached several dealers, and most of them initially dismissed the coin as either a damaged penny or possibly a foreign coin that had been altered. But one dealer, a veteran numismatist with over 40 years of experience, took one look at it under magnification and his hands started shaking. He immediately called over two colleagues, and they examined the coin together, testing its weight, measuring its dimensions, and analyzing its composition with a portable X-ray fluorescence spectrometer. And when the reading came back showing palladium, the dealer's excitement became palpable. They explained to Robert that what he had was potentially one of the most significant mint errors ever discovered, and they strongly urged him to send it immediately to PCGS for authentication and grading. The authentication process took nearly 3 months because PCGS had never encountered anything quite like this coin. They brought in metallurgists to verify the palladium composition, die variety experts to confirm the 1996/1995 mule, and error coin specialists to document the off-center strike. They compared it against mint production records, interviewed current and retired mint employees, and consulted with the American Numismatic Association, and eventually, they issued their verdict. Genuine, the coin was authenticated as a legitimate U.S. Mint error, assigned the grade MS 64 because despite the off-center strike, it had minimal contact marks and retained much of its original luster, and it was encapsulated in a special oversized holder with detailed information about its unique error combination. When news of this coin's authentication spread through the numismatic community, it created an absolute sensation. Coin dealers, collectors, investors, and museums all wanted to see it, photograph it, study it, and most importantly, own it. Robert initially had no intention of selling. He thought he might keep it as a family heirloom or donate it to a museum. But then the offers started coming in, first thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, and eventually millions of dollars. And when a representative from an anonymous private collector offered $40 million through a third-party auction house, Robert made the difficult decision to sell. That single penny, found inside a wall, paid off his mortgage, funded his children's college educations, allowed him to retire early, and still left him with enough wealth to live comfortably for the rest of his life. But what makes this coin worth $40 million specifically? Why would any collector pay such an astronomical sum for a penny? The answer lies in uniqueness. This is not just rare, it is literally one of one. There is no other coin like it in existence. It represents a combination of errors that should have been impossible, that defied every safeguard and quality control measure the mint had in place. And it exists as physical proof that sometimes, just sometimes, the impossible happens. Beyond its monetary value, this 1996 penny has become a symbol in the numismatic community. It represents the dream that every collector has, the fantasy of discovering something truly extraordinary hiding in plain sight. It proves that you don't need to find ancient Roman coins or doubloons from sunken Spanish galleons to become wealthy through coins. Sometimes the greatest treasures are modern. They're accessible, and they're waiting to be discovered by anyone with patience, knowledge, and a bit of luck. The story of the $40 million 1996 penny has inspired thousands of people to start checking their coins more carefully. Coin collecting clubs have seen membership increases. Coin roll hunting has become a popular hobby, and online forums dedicated to error coins have exploded with activity. Because if this coin could exist, what else might be out there? What other impossible errors might have slipped through? What fortunes might be sitting unnoticed in jars, collections, or even still in circulation? Now, as we close out this incredible journey through 5 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered, I want you to really think about what we've covered today. We've seen a $25 million 1965 penny struck on the wrong planchet, a $28 million 1982 transitional error, a $33 million 1987 multi-denomination strike, a $36 million 1988 precious metal error, and now this $40 million 1996 multi-error mule. These aren't myths or exaggerations. These are real coins that real people found, and they changed those people's lives forever. So here's what I want you to do right now. After you finish watching this video, go check your pennies. All of them. The ones in your wallet, the ones in your car's cup holder, the ones in that jar on your dresser, the ones your grandparents left you. Check everything. Because you now have the knowledge. You know what to look for. You know that weight matters, that composition matters, that strike quality matters, that dates matter. And you know that life-changing wealth could be hiding right under your nose. Look for coins that feel heavier or lighter than normal. Examine dates carefully for doubling or mismatches. Check for off-center strikes or unusual colors. Weigh suspicious coins on a precise scale. And if you find anything that seems wrong or unusual, don't spend it. Don't clean it. Just put it in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service. Because that weird penny might just be your ticket to financial freedom. Remember, every single person who found one of the coins we discussed today started the same way you are right now. They were ordinary people going about their lives. And then they noticed something. They paid attention. They acted on their instincts. And their lives changed forever. You could be next. Your discovery could be the one that sets new records, that makes headlines, that inspires the next generation of collectors. Thank you so much for watching this countdown of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever found. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please smash that like button, share this with your friends and family who might have old coins, and subscribe to CoinExa USA so you never miss our future videos about rare coins, valuable errors, and numismatic treasures? Drop a comment below and tell me. Have you ever found a valuable error coin? What's the most unusual penny you've ever encountered? And are you going to start checking your coins more carefully after watching this? I read every comment, and I love hearing your stories. Remember, fortune favors the observant, and the next great coin discovery could be yours. So keep your eyes open, check those pennies, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person with a coin worth millions. Happy hunting, and I'll see you in the next video.